Good morning, everyone. Welcome to IHC, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On this day, every year, we gather to commemorate and celebrate the World Humanitarian Day, to remember our colleagues, all aid workers, and you, people helping people. First, a message from the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres.
There is a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to support people living through a humanitarian crisis. This village includes affected people who are always first to respond when disasters strike. Neighbors helping neighbors. It includes a global community pulling together to support them as they recover and rebuild. And it includes hundreds of thousands of individual humanitarians, volunteers and professionals alike, delivering healthcare and education, food and water, shelter and protection, help and hope. Far from the spotlight and out of the headlines, humanitarians work around the clock to make our world a better place. Against incredible odds, often at great personal risk, there is suffering in some of the most dangerous circumstances imaginable. Today, the number of people who need humanitarian assistance has never been higher because of conflicts, climate change, COVID-19, poverty, hunger, and unprecedented levels of displacement. On this year's World Humanitarian Day, we celebrate humanitarians everywhere. We salute their dedication and courage and pay tribute to those who lost their lives in pursuit of this noble cause. They represent the best of humanity.
Doctors Without Borders confirmed 5 of its staff members have been released in Nigeria. This 5 weeks after they were kidnapped in neighbouring Cameroon.
Sí tendría temor, sí lo tendría porque tendría mucho temor de que me pasara algo, ya que en algunas veces, viniendo en la ambulancia a dejar a un paciente, muchas veces se encuentra uno grupos armados, lo detienen, lo requisan, le preguntan. ¿Cómo miraría mi trabajo si no viviera en un contexto de conflicto? Pues sería mucho mejor porque saldría de mi casa sin miedo, podría ir y venir y como sin temor, ¿sí? Podría acostarme tranquilo sin saber de que me van a...
And now I yield the floor to our host, Giuseppe Saba, CEO of Dubai's International Humanitarian City.
Thank Thank you, Magali. Thank you, Magali. Thanks to all of you for having accepted our invitation, for joining us in celebrating the 2022 World Humanitarian Day. It's quite difficult after the message of the Secretary General and the video to add something more. Honestly speaking, this is the most difficult celebration that I have during the year, because of course, for those that are, for example, the colleagues of World Food Programme, together with me, they saw the world more and more populated by names of colleagues who lost their life in doing their job in the field. And the numbers, again, are telling us that even during the past 12 months, the list is growing. And I hope that, and I'm pretty sure that is true, is growing also the community of the humanitarian workers. When I saw the theme of this year, I said, okay, wow, here we are talking about the local communities. And when I was more or less on the half of my current age, one of the first things that I learned from the colleagues, and this is part of the package, is, guys, whenever you have a disaster, it's the local community which is saving life. The local community is the one who knows perfectly their territory, they know perfectly their own people, and so on and so on. And if I should look into the past few years, we started in celebrating those that are not absolutely the traditional, professional humanitarian workers. So we are going to start finally in recognizing other colleagues. We celebrate the World Humanitarian Day dedicated to those health assistants, doctors, dedicated all the efforts for assisting us during the COVID-19 pandemic. But this is something that is on the basic instructions whenever we have a disaster, the local communities. So it's time to recognize the efforts of everybody, all of those people that are taking care of us, taking care of each other at village level, at country level, at international level. This is what usually our community used to do, to respond at international level, but we need to recognize them. I have only a remark from my own side. Let's us remember all of those colleagues, friends, unknown soldiers, unknown people that are spreading humanity every single day, to remember them exactly every single day, not just one day per year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, boss. Touching, wise, and inspiring, as always. It's my honor now to invite Dr. Dina Assaf to take the floor. Dr. Assaf, as we all know, is the United Nations Resident Coordinator for the UAE.
Good morning, colleagues. And first, a thank you to Giuseppe for hosting International Humanitarian Day. As he rightly said, a very important day, not just to acknowledge for today, but for every day. So colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as we all know, on this day in 2003, a bomb attack on the Canal Hotel in Baghdad killed 22 humanitarian aid workers. In honor of their sacrifice, the UN General Assembly proclaimed August 19th of every year as the World Humanitarian Day, which is what we mark today. Regretfully, the number of humanitarian workers killed in the line of service continues to increase, reaching 140 colleagues who lost their lives just this last year. The number is expected to further increase as we see more unrest and violence around the world, from Afghanistan to Ukraine to South Sudan and on and on. I therefore would like us to take a moment of silence to recognize our colleagues who've sacrificed in support of humanity. Thank you. Thank you very much. Humanitarian action is indeed a noble mission that is anchored in the United Nations Charter, which calls for international cooperation in solving international problems, including those of a humanitarian character. The International Humanitarian City here in Dubai has become a most noteworthy example of this international cooperation, not only for being the world's biggest humanitarian partnership, but also for being a most innovative, forward-looking, and capable operation. Again, thanks to the leadership. The United Nations country team in the UAE takes great pride in the partnership we built with the IHC, and we look forward to doing more in service of humanity, particularly those who need our help the most. Last year, together we served millions of persons in 117 countries around the world, not to mention our exemplary collaboration as part of the COVID-19 global response operations. However, the ultimate goal is to reduce the need for humanitarian assistance, to work together to strengthen resilience capabilities of vulnerable populations around the world, and actively anticipate what might be the future humanitarian needs and how we can strengthen preparedness and pre-position capabilities to support these targeted communities. Just last week, the UN's World Food Programme and the International Federation of the Red Cross signed an MOU around anticipatory humanitarian action and organized a discussion on the road to COP27. This sort of cooperation is critical for a world that is scrambling to deal with the consequences of climate change on lives and livelihoods around the world. To conclude, I would like to reiterate the United Nations remains committed to service of humanity, working closely with all our partners and friends and all of you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Assaf. You are a role model to many of us here. So we are here because 13 years ago today, the humanitarian community, or we lost 22 colleagues in a bomb attack. Attacks on aid workers and aid facilities are a violation of the international humanitarian law. And who better to speak about that than Dr. Sama Shawi, the legal advisor of ICRC UAE delegation. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. much, first of all, to His Excellency Mr. Saba, and also Magali and everybody at IHC for organizing this event. I'm really happy and honored to be here, part of this event, to pay tribute to those humanitarian workers who are working for the sake of victims of armed conflicts, disasters, and other situations of violence, and also to commemorate those who've lost their lives while on duty. As an Iraqi, I pretty much know what does armed conflict do to people and to civilians in particular, and also I understand completely what Mr. Saba referred to just a while back on the importance of the local community to support and to be the first responders when a catastrophe or a conflict breaks out. Now, 19th of August, as mentioned earlier, is the World Humanitarian Day because UN resolution adopted by the General Assembly in 2008. Among its paragraphs, there is a paragraph designating this day to celebrate the lives and the workers of humanitarian workers. This day back in Baghdad, and I was there when the attack took place, we were so worried as a family because my cousin was amongst the employee at the UN at that time. He was in the office when the attack took place, and all of a sudden he was lying on the ground with the glass and metal fragments penetrating his scalp, face, and all over his body. And so thank God he survived and managed to heal and to move on with his life, and he's still working for the UN, as mentioned before. As a humanitarian worker, he kept on moving from mission to mission in this domain. But what about those who have lost their lives in this incident? And around 2 months after this incident, and again in Baghdad, the ICRC delegation was also attacked. That was on 27th of October 2003. We lost 2 of our colleagues, in addition to several civilians who were around and who lost their lives as well. And as mentioned earlier, the saga continues. Humanitarian relief workers continue to be attacked, abducted, kidnapped, or taken as a hostage, as earlier explained. Now, building on the UN resolution on the designation of this day to celebrate the lives of humanitarian workers, and also the campaign of this year's celebration of the World Humanitarian Day, that it takes a village to support a person who is in need because of a humanitarian crisis, I'd like to shed a light on 2 points. The cooperation within the components of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement to which we belong, and also the protection of relief, humanitarian relief personnel under international humanitarian law. Now quickly, for the components of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement, we are the largest, if you wish, humanitarian network in the world of 80 million people, and also around 15 million volunteers who are scattered around the world to implement, if you wish, the mission and mandate of the movement, which is to assist and support victims of armed conflicts and other situations of violence and definitely crisis. Now, each component of the movement, the components are 3. They are the International Committee of the Red Cross, 192 national societies of Red Cross and Red Crescent, and also their Federation of International Red Cross and Red Crescent. Each component has its own responsibilities and duties in certain times, but they all cooperate together. They are all bound by one statute, and they all work under the same humanitarian principles. Now, with this amount of volunteers and people working for the movement, we can reach to many areas, be in contact with so many beneficiaries, and also provide assistance and protection to many of people who are in need. A part of cooperation, which is also part of how we cope and work in crisis. We work with national societies of Red Cross and Red Crescent on so many issues like distributing food and non-food items, working on mine action and reduce contamination of weapons. We work also on issues related to the missing, looking for the missing, reuniting families who were separated by a conflict, and also on other issues. We also cooperate with the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent on disseminating international humanitarian law, developing this branch of law, and also, as recently happened with the Climate and Environment Charter for Humanitarian Organization that was adopted both by the ICRC and the Federation last year, and it's open for signature for humanitarian organizations. Now, this cooperation that we have within the movement is deep, long-standing, and complementary. And so its value speaks about itself in situations, as mentioned, of crisis and armed conflicts. Now, just speaking quickly about the protection of humanitarian relief personnel under international humanitarian law. This body of law applies in times of armed conflicts, whether national or international, to protect those who do not participate in hostilities or no longer participating in them, and also to limit the means and methods of warfare. Now, humanitarian workers, as such, of course, there are some details relating to their protection, but as a general rule, humanitarian relief personnel must be protected and respected, and this obligation is not only a treaty obligations mentioned in the Geneva Conventions of 1949 and their additional protocols, but also it has become a customary obligation and a customary rule, meaning that our parties to the conflict should instruct their armed forces not to attack humanitarian personnel who do not fall under the umbrella of the movement and who do not use the emblem of either Red Cross or Red Crescent are outside the protection that IHL provides to those who are within the movement, showing and displaying the emblem because they have a certain status under the conventions, under IHL. However, humanitarian relief personnel who work outside of the umbrella of the movement can still enjoy a protection because they are civilians after all. They should not be attacked directly, and they should not be taken as hostages, and there are the rules that apply to the protection of civilians more or less apply to them. Besides, there are specific rules protecting them, and as mentioned, they should be respected and protected, and their work should not be impeded by the parties to the conflicts. They should be moved freely and safely to perform their duties. Also, the international or the International Criminal Court statute considered directing attacks against humanitarian relief personnel is considered as a war crime. Now, with this, I'd like to end, and maybe this event is also an opportunity to reaffirm and reiterate the obligations of the parties to the conflicts, whether states or non-state armed groups, to respect and ensure respect of IHL, that is international humanitarian law, part which, of course, paying attention and provide the due respect and protection to humanitarian personnel. Thank you very much once again, and happy World Humanitarian Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your story and expertise with us. The theme of this year, as our distinguished speakers have already mentioned, is It Takes a Village, something we all know too well as the refugee crisis continues to worsen. The number of forcibly displaced people has drastically increased in the past years. To speak about that and more, I invite from UNHCR, an agency that is very dear to my heart, actually, Khalid Khalifa, the Senior Advisor and Representative to the GCC countries. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's unfair to speak after you, Dr. Samar. It's a tough act to match. I have a written word to prove, but I will not read it for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not very good in reading words. Two, because previous speakers, Giuseppe, Dr. Dina, and Dr. Samar have already covered most of what I wanted to say in this word. However, I would like to sincerely thank IHC, thank you, Giuseppe, and your team for organizing this gathering, and also thank the government of Dubai for giving us the platform and the space to serve humanity from here. And some reflections on this year's theme. I was thinking, why should it take a village, actually? Should it take a village to save humanity? It does. It takes a village for many, many reasons. Because, one, what is needed is beyond the capacity of any single part of that village. We need, according to the Global Humanitarian Overview of this year, prepared by OCHA, $41 billion to respond to the humanitarian needs. So it takes a village. There are 274 million people who need assistance this year. And this requires a village to help. It also takes a village because we became more interconnected than ever before. So whatever happens in this global village, the world, affects every other part of it. COVID has spread and affected every single place on this planet. But even if we are not talking about a pandemic, if we are talking about a Syria crisis, it affected the immediate neighborhood of Syria, the 5 neighboring countries, but almost every other country in the world. Ukraine is now affecting every single place on this planet. The Ebola crisis affected almost everybody in the world. So it does take a village to respond to what is happening in the world. We also have never seen this number of displaced people in the world. Last year, we were talking about 84 million. This year, we have exceeded 100 million people who are forcibly displaced, who are forced to leave their countries, and the number keeps growing. The number of colleagues who fall in the field is also not decreasing. We are seeing almost more or less the same numbers on a yearly basis. Colleagues who are killed, who are kidnapped, who face security issues. while trying to help others. And we have to put these things into context. I am very glad that this year there is a focus on local humanitarians, because they are the ones actually who suffer the most, and they're the ones who sacrifice the most. Out of the 140 people, 44 people who were killed this year, 99% of those are local staff. So when we speak about localization, we should speak about the context as a whole. Localization also means acknowledging the contributions that people make at the local level, and there is nothing more precious than your life to contribute when you are helping others. I have been in the field for many, many years, including some of the most hostile environments. I was in Iraq in 2003, throughout the whole nightmare of the war. I was in South Lebanon in 2006. I was in Libya in 2011, to list a few. And I know what kind of sacrifice colleagues make in the field. I worked with some of the colleagues who lost their life from ICRC in Iraq and from other organizations. And I worked with many colleagues who never made it back home while they're trying to do their duty. So to conclude, may the souls of the thousands of colleagues who fell in the field, who died, who sacrificed their lives, but also those who were injured and kidnapped and suffered many traumas that might never leave them until the end of their life. May the souls of those who died rest in peace, and we must continue. That's the last message that I would like to leave you with. We must continue. We as humanitarians cannot afford to despair, because when we despair, there are millions of people who might die in the field. Thank you very much.
We thank Mr. Khalid for his speech and for making a difference in this world. And now a warm welcome to our final speaker, من أهل البيت. You're basically family to IHC now, Majid Yahya, UAE Country Director and Representative for the GCC region of the World Food Programme.
Thank you. And you put me as a last speaker. I have nothing to say after they said everything. But good morning, and thank you, IHC, for making this, celebrating this event, as we do every year. And as said, we come here every year to celebrate the lives and the achievement of those humanitarian workers around the world and who works under difficult and hardship conditions. And unfortunately, the need for humanitarian work is not decreasing. It's increasing by the day. Every day, we have a country topping up the list. We are seeing now what's happening in the Horn of Africa. We are seeing Ethiopia, South Sudan, the Sahel, and Latin America. So the list just gets bigger and bigger. So the need for humanitarian workers is already increasing every day, which is sadly that is happening. However, on a positive side, we also want to celebrate the achievements, the impact of those humanitarian workers around the world. For a number of years, they have managed to save lives. They have managed to change lives of millions of people. Examples are, of course, there. UNHCR, how many people they were managed to repatriate back to their homes or resettle in another country. How many millions we were able at the World Food Programme to save their lives or change their life positively. And today I want to celebrate the achievement of WFP, but of an individual. I want to celebrate our humanitarian worker, Walida, in Yemen. Walida is working in the nutrition program in Yemen. 15 years ago, she was a WFP beneficiary. She benefited from WFP school meals that enabled her continue her life, get her education. But at the end, she now ended up as a humanitarian worker, helping others to change their lives as she did, as she's doing now. So there is positive that we see the impact of our work. This is live in front of our eyes. We see it in Walida, and we see the changes that we were able to contribute. While small, but for us it's big, it's live, it's changing our lives. So I would like to leave you with Walida as an example of many humanitarian workers around the world. They work day and night to change the lives and save the lives of others. Thank you.
تعبت على أمي وسافرتها إلى منطقة مدينة وسووا لها عمليات الممرضات، وكنت أحلم إنني أكون يعني ممرضة زي ما هم أخدم أصحاب القرية. حسيت إنني فرصتي إنني أكمل علمي بعد ما شفت يعني البنات يعني شجعوني في البرنامج نحصل السلة وكذا، فخلص يعني في طموحي، فحسيت نفسي ان انا اتشجعت ان انا اكمل علمي، انني اسافر، انني اعمل، يعني فاجاني مثل الطموح. لما تكوني عند تستلمي سله غذائيه، لما شجعنا البرنامج يعني عندك احساس، عندك هوايه انك تكملي دراستك، انك تروحي تذاكري تعملي، لانه بتقولي اني مستفيده من المدرسه، بس من قبل ما كنا نفكر كده.
Thank you, Walida. Thank you, Majid. It's always a pleasure and honor to have you. I also owe a special vote of thanks to UN OCHA for their collaboration, and to Médecins Sans Frontières, Bring Hope Foundation, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, and my IHC colleagues, especially Hanan, Pepino, and Hamda, for the next video.
Okay, my name is Shruti Ravi. I'm from India.
My name is Irene Kasioki from Kenya.
My name is Malak Atke. I'm from Damascus, Syria.
My name is Mohammed Sharif. I work for International Humanitarian City.
I'm Media and Communication for IFRC GCC country in Dubai.
I work as a Partnership Development Officer.
I'm a trained architect, and I've specialized in sustainable humanitarian architecture, sustainable emergency architecture, actually.
My title is Facilities Management Executive. I'm handling the facilities of IHC, the offices and warehouses, showrooms, and the open yard.
I cover GCC countries, 5 countries: Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates.
No, not as an architect, not when I was studying architecture, no. But then as I worked in the corporate environment in Dubai for a while, And then I just felt like it didn't like fulfill me enough, you know, I needed to do more. It's actually really different. It's a low resource setting, and it's just a very different, like vastly different field, right, from the corporate to the humanitarian. So I think there's a lot of readjusting of your brain and your skill set that you need to do.
I joined the IFRC February 2020 during the starting of COVID.
I was with them for 4 months in 2019, and then I started working with them in October 2020 again.
I work for International Humanitarian Society for the past 7 years.
I joined the organization early in the year in April 2022, and so far it's been about 6 months with the organization.
The first time I was with them, I was in Barcelona. I was an intern with the construction referent.
I've been able to work from the Dubai office without going to the field, and but we're looking forward to joining the team on ground soon.
Oh, how warm everyone was.
When I first arrived at IHC, the board caught my attention. Where it was, like mentioned, International Humanitarian City, and I didn't know much about IHC at the beginning.
I think for me, that was the interaction of being in the humanitarian space. So I remember the first day when I walked into the organization, I was glad, I felt like I was home, because I've always wanted to be where the action is. So seeing the faces and everything that Bring Hope Humanitarian is doing, I felt like this was home. This was where I wanted to be. This is where I wanted to give back to the community.
I was in Democratic Republic of Congo. I was a construction manager for a hospital. We were building services of a hospital. And yeah, it was a 6-month mission. It was in French. It was very intense. It was great.
The sourcing of information, because we were working from home, I was new. I did not meet anybody, neither from IFRC or from the national societies.
Oh, language for sure, because I went there not knowing French, and I had to like learn on the job. So now I know construction French.
We are, as a facility management, doing A to Z jobs like establishing a proper environment for the members here. We have services for maintenance, pest control, security guard, and chilling system here.
I think communication and media is basic in every organization and in every society, because the one who will highlight and have much more visibility for the efforts and for the hard work national societies or any organization is doing is the media or the communication person.
I think architects are trained to think systemically, and they're not just to, like, for example, civil engineers, they are concerned about the structural stability of a building. But architects think about the users, the beneficiaries, they think about the doctors and the nurses and the staff who's going to work there. They think about the circulation of materials, they think about how the building fits with the overall community as well.
I think my role is very key in this instant, because we are sourcing for fundraising, we are looking for partners to help us in setting up some of these key activities that are needed right now in settling the global refugee crisis.
I can give you a small example. A cleaner who are not paying attention the people to, if he is missing for one day, then you can see the mess around the area. So this is how the facilities management work is.
Yes, I have very many special moments that are dear to my heart. So I have various projects that are implemented in some of the marginalized communities back at home, where we were helping women access to quality health care, pregnant women access to care.
Something which will make me smile at work is a response from IHC to the crisis around the world.
I remember working with piloting project for 70 children who lost their parts, either hands or legs. I still remember, I worked with them for 2 months. So I really can't forget a girl. She was 6 years old. I still remember the moment when she has her 2 artificial limbs and she stand again, and she could stand again and could start walking again. You can't imagine the smiling face and the total different person. I can't forget this girl, really. I really remember her every morning.
The best part was seeing the operating theater being used, that I actually saw somebody performing in an operation, which was so satisfying, and it felt really good. So with the Dubai office, there is no architecture roles or construction roles. So I worked with HR.
Actually, we are the ambassador of the national societies.
During the summer, I helped an expat have a medical evacuation, and I was always coordinating with her for when she was going to the hospital, for example. I was always keeping tabs on her. So I think it's challenging in the way that you have to be available all the time and just be super empathetic and compassionate towards everyone who is doing all the hard work. So I don't think it's easy. I don't think HR sounds easy, but it's not.
Given my background, I've been in the NGO sector for a while. However, my specific role was in medical and health interventions back at home in Kenya. But now when I joined Bring Hope Foundation, this was a new space. Humanitarian, the refugee crisis, this was a new space. As much as I have experience in NGO, being in the humanitarian refugee crisis space was new for me.
It's a mixed reaction. It's more like, we're super proud of you, but why are you away from us for so long? Oof, it takes a village.
Nevertheless, if you are not recognized via the media, via the people, you are doing your job in a proper way, and your job is already recognized. And we should to go beyond the lines to provide the hand to the needy people around the world.
As humanitarians, by the time you're choosing to be a humanitarian, it's because you have a passion for social impact. So for me, I would really like to say thank you to all the humanitarians out there, and maybe continue working towards changing the lives of the communities that really need us.
Any organization or international organization will not recognize the exact need of these people without the NGOs of these or national society of this country. They will help in order to know exactly the needs of these people.
I just hope we continue that way, and we just try to cooperate and be together and solve issues as a team.
With that, we wrap up our session, and before we grab a bite and enjoy each other's company a little bit before we head into the weekend, a closing remark from Giuseppe.
Thank you, Magali. It was not supposed to take again the podium. I asked Magali to give me a couple of minutes. First of all, thank you very much. ICRC was the program from the United Nations representative and the UNHCR. Finally, a big thank to all of the other colleagues who joined us through the videos. I was doing just a consideration. This is my 6th celebration in Dubai of the World Humanitarian Day. What I can tell you is that I had 6 different type of celebrations. Yes, it's true with 6 different themes, but I saw from the community of IHC, but in particular from IHC team, they really put the heart in preparing the World Humanitarian Day. Thanks in particular again to our speakers. They brought and light, in particular, not only ICRC, that the humanitarian worker or whoever is doing humanitarian action should not be absolutely a target. The positive impact of the humanitarian action. Thank you, Majid, for highlighting this point. I'm pretty sure that even Khaled can bring us thousands of examples on UNHCR side. And thanks, Dina, for remembering the Hotel Canal attack, despite, unfortunately, when I was mentioning the WFP wall, started in getting names before the Hotel Canal. Hotel Canal was most probably the main tragedy for the UN family, but signed at least this resolution in order to remember the humanitarian workers, again, which are not absolutely only and exclusively those working for the United Nations or international organizations or NGOs, but more and more we are discovering that we have other humanitarian workers. And I'm happy that this year we are going to celebrate the local communities. Thank you so much, and please join us.
Also, don't forget to leave a message on the board and take a